Welcome to the True North Country Comics Podcast, dedicated to promote Canadian comic book creators and supporters. It's July 5th, 2021. I'm John Swinimer. If you want to drop me a line, you can contact me at john@truenorthcountrycomics.com. On this episode, I chat with Jim Zub and Max Dunbar about Stone Star Volume 1 from Dark Horse Comics. This podcast is available on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. It's also available on the True North Country Comics channel on YouTube. I invite you to like and subscribe. Jim is a writer, artist, and art illustrator based in Toronto. He's worked for many publishing, movie, and video game companies including Marvel, DC Comics, Disney, Capcom, Hasbro, Cartoon Network, and Bandai Namco. When he's not busy as a freelance comic writer, Jim is a program coordinator for Seneca College's award-winning animation program. His many projects have included Wayward, Avengers No Road Home, Champions, Dungeons & Dragons, Conan, and a whole lot more. Max is an illustrator and concept artist for a variety of publishers. His past works include Champions for Marvel, Judge Dredd Under Siege for IDW, Gears of War Rise of Ram for IDW, First Strike for IDW, Micronauts for IDW, Slash and Burn for Vertigo, Dungeons & Dragons Legends of Baldur's Gate for IDW, The Mocking Dead for Dynamite, Red Sonja Atlantis Rises for Dynamite, Batman Urban Legends DC, and Stone Star for Comicsology for Dark Horse Comics, plus a lot more. Stone Star is a brand new space fantasy saga that centers on the nomadic space station called Stone Star that brings gladiatorial entertainment to ports across the galaxy. Inside this gargantuan vessel of tournaments and temptations, foragers and fighters struggling to survive, a young thief named Dale discovers a dark secret in the depths of Stone Star and has to decide where his destiny lies, staying hidden in the shadows or standing tall in the searing spotlight of the arena. Either way, his life and the cosmos itself will never be the same. The new book from Dark Horse Comics collects the original Comicsology digital series, Stone Stars number 1 to 5, in print for the first time. And so, without further ado, here's my chat with Jim Zub and Max Dunbar about Stone Star Volume 1 from Dark Horse Comics. Jim Zub and Max Dunbar, thank you very much for taking time to chat with me.
Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure.
Appreciate your time. What I normally do to start off the interview is ask the creators about who they're reading today. So maybe Jim will ask you to start first. Who's on your bookshelf?
So I'm always reading a lot of Marvel stuff because I get sent advances on a bunch of the different Marvel titles just to keep up on continuity and things like that. So the last book I kind of did a deep dive on was actually Daredevil. So I'm getting all caught up on Daredevil. Not for any particular project I'm working on, just because I've been behind. So I really love what the Zdarsky and co. have been doing on that one, and it's been great to see the twists and turns he's been putting into the story.
Sure. How about you, Max? Who are you reading today?
Well, I actually I don't read as many comics as I would like to, just because my schedule is so hectic that I don't have a lot of free time, unfortunately, especially at the moment. But I've been reading a little bit more of Invincible, especially because the amazing show has just come out. Mm-hmm. And I got really far into the series, but I never actually finished it. So I thought it would be a good opportunity to start from the beginning again and then read my way through it. And so, yeah, I'd say I'm probably about halfway through it now. And yeah, it's just one of my favorite superhero stories. I love that it starts, from nothing, in the sense that you've read everything about the universe, essentially, by the time you get midway. You're not missing out on much back matter or other material. And I love the characters. Super fun, great art. And yeah, so I'm enjoying it.
Great. Yeah, I heard lots of good things about it. And I heard lots of good things about your current book that you're talking about today, which is Stone Star Volume 1 from Dark Horse. So maybe, Jim, you could set this up, and maybe for those who are not familiar with the story, how would you describe it to someone?
Sure. So Stone Star is a space fantasy adventure. It's all about this nomadic space station. So imagine you've got what we kind of mixed together is this idea of a gladiatorial arena, but instead of it being in one singular location, station. It's actually part of a space station that travels from planet to planet, bringing entertainment and danger wherever it goes. And so we get to have this cool science fiction element to it, but then the actual gladiatorial arena itself is really colorful and action packed and has this bit of a fantasy kind of edge to it. So Max gets to design dozens and dozens of amazing, colorful characters and robots and aliens and all sorts of funky stuff. And we get to have only the entire universe as our playground.
Well, it's certainly is an adventure for sure, cosmic adventure. And to that end, I was wondering, Max, if you could talk about what inspired you to create these various characters and backgrounds and story.
Yeah, well, I jumped at the opportunity to work with Jim on this type of project just because it was so open-ended in terms of what we could do and create. The idea of going from world to world, and each one of these worlds, we can do whatever we want with them, and then having the station itself populated with an infinite number of different species of creatures and monsters and robots, as Jim said. So yeah, the thing that really drew me to it was the fact that I can really do anything I want when it comes to the design. It was a chance to take all my favorite things and mash them all up and sort of just see where it took us. And I think we developed a cool look to it. But ultimately it can change anytime because there's always a new type of person out there that we can design.
Yeah, I think that's what's been really fun about it too, is that I can set up, a cast of some of the characters, and then Max kind of dives right in and designs them. And then he comes up with other designs, and then based on how they look, I can figure out their personalities or figure out where to slot them in. So it's a really fun kind of collaborative process rather than it being, fully script driven. I think it's this nice back and forth where sometimes the art is dictating a bunch of story elements, and sometimes the plot and the character stuff I'm coming up with is dictating Max's designs, and really just that full collaborative feel.
Yeah, it's really fun to see. If I design a character just on a big sort of brainstorming piece of paper and send it over to Jim, and then later seeing that character referenced as a new character with a name and a backstory and some special ability of some kind fighting in the arena, none of which I had, given much thought to when drawing him. I just, wanted to draw a cool character. So it's really fun seeing sort of a personality and backstory being given to these characters.
Yeah, that is cool. And that actually leads to my next question, the collaborative process. I wanted to dig a little bit deeper, Max, on what tools you use to create your artwork, and then maybe how involved was Jim in that process? Was it a digital exchange, or, as you said, a scanning process and say, hey, look at this, give me your feedback? Or walk me through how you did that.
Yeah, so I'm pretty traditional art-wise, pencils, pens, Copic markers to shade stuff. Sometimes I will, I'll definitely put it in Photoshop and color the artwork if we're figuring out a color scheme for a character. But ultimately, it's a lot of just traditional sketching, which I love to do. And so the beginning of it, when we were developing the sort of core characters, there was a lot of back and forth. Jim had some sort of base ideas on what he wanted to see and what he thought would be cool to build the story around. And I think he even had names for the characters at that point, or at least some of them. And then, I would take a pass at designing them, and he would take a look, and he would give some feedback on what he liked or didn't like. And we just sort of chip away at it and hone in on a design that we both were happy with. Really fun, and some fun challenges too, even though we have very similar aesthetics and things that we like. Anytime where you're developing a character together, people are going to come at it with different ideas. And so it's just really fun to sort of find that compromise. And I think in a character like Dern, who is, this sort of giant robot, my ideas on what a giant robot would look like differ from Jim's, and we sort of met in the middle. And I thought,
right,
that was a really great way to do it.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun to be, so I had the base idea of this roving kind of gladiatorial arena of the stars kind of thing, and some of the characters that we would be focused on. But beyond that general sort of, okay, this character is, our young scrappy kind of survivor, and he's going to have this large robot, and there's going to be a grizzled old trainer. I kind of left a lot of that open to Max to figure out the look of them, and then that would also help me to drill down on their personality. And so that exactly what Max was saying, that back and forth process was so much fun. Sometimes Max would just nail it right from the very first sketch, and I'd be kind of shocked how much you suddenly realize, oh man, I can't wait to write dialogue for this character. Like this, I already can see them kind of going through the story. And other times, like Max was saying, you're kind of moving around trying to find the right pieces or what that aesthetic is going to be. And sometimes even when you think you have it in the character sketch stage, we would make some small changes on the actual pages, because you would realize, oh, okay, this is going to work better in motion, or this is going to work better in terms of the story itself. A character like, so Dale, the main character, he's our kind of scavenger. He's got a best friend, Kitso. I don't recall you doing any rough sketches. I'm pretty sure the first time you drew Kitso was like on the page.
Yeah, that was one of those characters where I would have loved to do some sketches, but there's just so many characters in it. And, eventually you do have to start drawing. Kitso's one of those characters where he shows up in shadow a little bit first. And I think I went back and I was like, oh, I should just change this about him or this. So I'm pretty sure if you study it in the first couple pages, he changes a little bit. But yeah, arrived on a look that I was ultimately happy with, and Jim was. But yeah, designed him essentially on the page, whereas Dale, Kakani, Volnus, and Dern, the sort of main characters.
We did a bunch of designs.
Yeah, we went back and forth quite a bit. I think Volnus was the one that I think we arrived at something right off the bat that we were both happy
literally
with.
Your first sketch. What's nice too about the collection that is being released at Dark Horse is it's got a ton of back matter. So we have a lot of those development sketches in the back, and you can see that kind of refinement process as we figure out what we wanted to do with it.
I was just going to say, just to interrupt, that is quite unique for doing a digital comic at the outset. The fact you're using traditional tools and you've got the artwork there as backup in the Dark Horse book is just amazing. So congrats on doing that.
Yeah, it's something I always like that. Yeah, exactly. Whenever I put together a trade, I always try and design it like for myself. If I was the reader, what would I want to see? Mm-hmm. And I love the development process. I love seeing character sketches and the rough process material in general. Like that's the stuff that really excites me. And so I was like, well, we've got our say on this stuff, so why not make it, dig in deep and show as much of this cool stuff as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And getting back to the rapid pace, I think is quite unique in this book. You never really have a moment to take a breath and go, well, what's going on? So to that end, I'm wondering, the book ends quite abruptly. And I know that you put it out as issues. And I'm wondering if that was a deliberate choice from a narrative perspective. Say, okay, we're on the edge of a cliff now and we're stopping right here. Your hope was to have a second season, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted this to be, the opening kind of salvo, and this idea that we were building as much momentum as possible so that we'd set up the characters, we'd set up the world, we'd given you a bunch of conflicts, both in the past and in the present. And now we have all this material that we can then dig into more deeply. You know what I mean? So it was about kind of coming out as strong as possible. I find, don't get me wrong, I'm all for, different pacing and for a slow kind of burn. But the reality is that a lot of readers, when I looked at the kinds of stories and even the age group that we were going for, like this is a really big, bombastic, colorful action adventure. So there's comparisons to be made, I think, not necessarily stylistically, but to manga, in that idea of like, very rich kind of colorful worlds and characters and tons of action and tons of emotional content. And so I was trying to channel little bits and pieces of that, where I was sort of saying, okay, those, action adventure series usually come out of the gate roaring pretty strong, and they set up all sorts of cool toys to play with. And then you can slow down and kind of, once the audience is on board and they're like, yeah, I want to find out more about this, then we can really start to drill down deeper and get into even more of that kind of emotional content. So that was kind of my hope with it, that this opening story, these 5 issues, they really are like a rocket ride. Like, we don't slow down exactly, the way you were saying. And now we've set up all these pieces. Now we can start to, kind of isolate them and focus on them with each, subsequent season.
Yeah, that ending was very cinematic. I could almost hear the music in the background coming up as Max had those characters there. Very well done.
Yeah, and in many ways, the story is about what brings the characters to this point. Dale thinks he wants to become a gladiator, and these are all the pieces that have led him down this path. But him becoming one and what that means is really a separate, it's the next stage for me. And what we've established is that these characters have each other's back, and they're linked in this really cool way. And that was really what we were setting up there. You know what I mean? And so for me, it wasn't about, we needed to get them to this point so you understood what motivated them. And now we can really kind of do really, enjoyable interactions between them and where their story goes from here.
Sure. I want to turn a bit now to publishers. You've both worked with a variety of companies over the years. So I want to just dig in a little bit and talk about your working experience with Comicsology for the digital version, and now Dark Horse for the physical book. Maybe we could talk a bit about that. How was it for you, Max?
It was great. Yeah, I had never worked with Comicsology before. I was super keen to do a creator-owned book. But of course, in a lot of different avenues, if you do a creator-owned book, you're giving up sort of that safety of a page rate. If you want actual skin in the game, if you want to own a piece of it, a lot of times you sort of take that big risk and put it out there and then reap the rewards if it does well. But if it falls flat or people don't like it, then, you're kind of in trouble because you've just put potentially years of your life, or in this case, I think it was about a half year or maybe more that we worked on it. So Comicsology was really great because it was a bit of a split the difference where I got some, page rate, but then we also owned the material. So it was, a unique experience for me and just really gratifying because it was my first time working on something that was that entirely creator owned. I had done a Vertigo book before, but I came onto that as an artist. And so while I loved the experience, I didn't build it from the ground up like I did with this book. So just a great experience. And I found them to be very hands off in terms of directions or things that we needed to accomplish or needed to do. I think Jim probably interfaced with them a lot more than I did, but I never received any marching orders or anything. So I just got to draw the stuff that I love doing.
Good to hear.
Yeah, what was really nice about so Chip Mosier was our kind of main contact, and he's the one that's been running the Comicsology Originals program over there. And I had met him multiple times over the years, but we had talked multiple times also about, them wanting to do more creator-owned stuff at Comicsology and having this Originals program where they were going to, promote different types of books and that we weren't limited by even what the print market was doing or things like that. And so I had done all my creator-owned books over at Image, and Image is amazing, and they've been really great for my career and also, a joy to work with. And so I kind of put the challenge back on Chip, and I said, how can you do it better? You know what I mean? Like, Image is where I prefer to do my creator-owned books for a bunch of different reasons. They've got a really, really clear contract, and everything's really straightforward, and we own everything, and, and they help promote the stuff. And they said, well, Comicsology has some really unique possibilities with the digital delivery. We could do things that, a traditional print publisher couldn't. They can promote it in different spaces. And of course, Comicsology is owned by Amazon. So then they've got everything from Kindle Unlimited to, the Comicsology Unlimited subscription program that they could get this out to a lot of readers. And that was enticing to me and interesting. So one of the things we did, for example, is we actually, when we launched Stone Star a couple of years ago, we announced it and released it the same day. So, which is just not something you can do with a print retailer where they would have to know about it ahead of time, right?
Yep.
So we literally did, hey, Jim Zub and Max Dunbar, the guys that have done the D&D series and worked on Champions together, they've got a new creator-owned book. Oh, when's it coming out? Now. And so it was like this really cool, exciting thing where we could surprise people with it and build up that kind of instant momentum right out of the gate. And then between that and Comicsology Unlimited and Kindle Unlimited, we had a readership where people were checking the book out because it was already part of their subscription. And so even if they'd never heard of us, there was no barrier to entry. They could just jump right in and try it out. And that was really appealing to me because I'm always trying to find different ways to, expand readership and find a new audience and just entice people in all sorts of ways. That summer we did WonderCon and we did San Diego Comic-Con, and they really did a wonderful job promoting it really aggressively out to a whole new audience of readers, because they weren't just looking and saying, okay, we need to get the comic shop, kind of audience. It was a much broader kind of approach. And that was really appealing to me. And then once they approved the initial pitch, like Max said, they were almost entirely hands off. They would proofread the stuff, but like Max and I have been doing this for a while. Like
right.
we know what we're delivering. But I got the creative team I wanted. Like Espen Grundehirn is one of the best colorists in the business, and he's a good friend.
Fantastic.
And he did just a phenomenal job. Marshall Doan has literally lettered every creator-owned book I've ever done, so I just always want to work with him. And so I brought him on board, and he understood how I wanted the book to look and feel. And we just all kind of hit the ground running on it. And Comicsology was just thrilled with the pages they were seeing and kind of just got out of the way and let us roar, let us do what we wanted to do with it.
Yeah, it's a great result for sure. And no disrespect for digital comics. I know it's great to have a book published that way, but what is it feeling now to have that book physically in your hands from Dark Horse? What does that mean to you?
This is the thing. Obviously, I think the digital format is really, really flexible, and I think it's amazing. But there is no replacement for me to having a physical book. I love the reading, experience of that. And even with a tablet, you can get some really good fidelity, but the printed page just shows off Max's and, Espen's colors, and like everything is another level for me. It's such a pleasure to have it now in print and really not be limited by it. That the digital was a great way for us to have it around, and it's still available, and the outreach that's possible through that platform is ideal. But now, Dark Horse has a great program. They've got great marketing in the bookstores and in libraries. They've been really awesome about getting it out to, now the traditional kind of comic store audience and beyond. And so we don't have to compromise. We can kind of have the best of both worlds with it.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it because I love the idea of someone browsing a store or, bookstore or a library, as Jim said, and just stumbling across this and having no idea what it is and, reading it and connecting with it, which I feel like Comicsology, you go on it and you either look up what you're looking for or you're browsing through titles. But it's not the same to me as maybe just coming across it in a bookstore and flipping through it casually and then realizing, wow, this is something I want to actually buy.
And it's a little easier to sign at conventions too, I bet.
That's true. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I know that you finished season 2, and in other interviews you've hinted about season 3. Can you say anything more about it, or is it still under wraps?
It's still mostly under wraps right now. I know Max has been really busy with this little podunk character called Batman, keeping him kind of busy. But I figure after he finishes working on this Batman, we might have some room in the schedule to work on other stuff. And who knows, maybe that'll include, Stone Star season 3. But I know where I want the story to head, and I've chatted with Max about some of the cool things we're going to do down the line. And in the same way that, season 1 sets up a bunch of things, we pay off a bunch of that in season 2. Like volume 2 has a lot of cool moments that tie into this first volume, but we also put some new pieces into play, some unexpected sort of turns that we want to constantly keep readers guessing. We don't want them to assume that they know where we're headed next. It's not as simple as just saying, okay, these guys are gladiators, now they're going to go, be champions. Like it's not that simple. We're sort of pushing character loyalties, and we're expanding the world and showing, like in volume 2, we show a lot more about the past of the arena and how the politics of that tie into and change kind of, Dale's life and everyone else connected to it. And so it's been fun to expand this world and use all the pieces that we've got here to just constantly lean into some elements and some tropes that people recognize, but always give them a bit of a twist.
Sure. Now, I've been reading that both of you have some really busy schedules coming up. I wonder if you want to just chat briefly about what's coming up for both of you in the very near future.
Go for it, Max. You first.
Okay, well, I have a Batman Beyond 30-page story coming up in the Batman Urban Legends series, which is a fairly new series from DC. So yeah, it'll be a standalone 30-page cyberpunk mystery. Super fun to work on, having a blast with Jackson Lansing and Colin Kelly and Sebastian Chang. And I'm also doing continuous work with the folks over at Dungeons & Dragons. Adam Lee and I are creating characters for free use in your game over on Dragon Plus magazine, which is a digital magazine, every other month. And yeah, so tons of stuff like that, and just having a blast.
Cool. How about you, Jim? What's up for you?
I'm writing another one of these podunk characters, this little guy named Conan the Barbarian.
Oh, that guy.
Yeah, that guy. It's a real dream project for me, honestly. It's bucket list stuff. So I'm the ongoing writer of Conan the Barbarian. And in September, the issue 25, which is also kind of legacy numbering, number 300, comes out. I've always wanted to do one of these anniversary issues. And I'm so proud of what we've been putting together and the response we've been getting from retailers and readers. So working with Corey Smith and Israel Silva on the series has been an absolute joy. Doing stories of, one of the greatest characters in literary fantasy, is kind of mind-bending when I think too much about it. I've got more that I'm doing as well with Dungeons and Dragons. Max and I are both really tightly associated with the crew over at Wizards of the Coast, and I'm always doing work with them, some behind the scenes and some more front-facing, with more cool announcements to come. I've got another Marvel series called Avengers Tech On that's going to be launching in August, and that is a really fun collaboration between Marvel Comics and Bandai Japan. And
Cool.
So it's this wild kind of redesign of the Avengers, almost as if it's a tokusatsu, like Power Rangers style, over the top, technology and mechs and all this wild stuff. And
Cool.
It is a ton of fun. I'm working with Jeff Cruz, who goes by the name Chamba. He's one of my favorite artists when I was working at Udon, and now we finally get to do a series together. And he is making every page this like kinetic, explosive, action-packed thing. It's just been an absolute joy. On top of that, I'm also doing a crossover. I'm doing my first work at Valve. Not Valve. I meant to say
Well,
Vault.
that would be a surprise.
Half-Life 3 confirmed.
Wow.
Oh, man. Okay, we got it right here.
I'm doing my first project over at Vault. I can't believe I said Valve. That was weird. So the Vault crew have been amazing, and I'm working on an event for them. They've been doing the Vampire the Masquerade series for a couple years now, based on really famous tabletop role-playing game. And now we're doing an event called World of Darkness Crimson Thaw, which is going to have vampires fighting werewolves. And I get to do more cool tabletop stuff over there. I'm running a bunch of amazing werewolf stuff. And our whole crew is just busting out in incredible work on that, and really, really proud of the material. So between all that and a couple other things sort of percolating behind the scenes, I've got a pretty full docket.
You're not standing still, that's for sure. So with all that being said, where do you recommend people go to find out more about you online and through social media?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Max_Dunbar. That's probably the places I'm most active on. And my website, max-dunbar.com, has just some black and white pages of previous projects if anyone wants to go look through them. But yeah, those two places are the best place to interact and find my work.
Awesome. Everything when it comes to me is the easiest way is to go to just jimzub.com. So from there you can find my Twitter, my Facebook, links to my Patreon. I've also got a bunch of tutorials about how to write comics, and I've been expanding some of that recently with some videos talking about the process, how to pitch stories, how to organize them, how to script them, what publishers and editors are looking for, and how to, get your stuff out there. And so if any of your listeners are interested in that end of the industry, I've got all kinds of free resources. And then if they want to dig any deeper, over on my Patreon, for the price of a fancy coffee, you can basically dig through my archive of over 250 comic scripts and pitches to see how stuff went from the initial script to the printed page.
Yeah, I just got to say it's pretty much invaluable if for anyone that's looking to get into comics or wants to make their own comic project. It's crazy amount of resources there. It's really awesome.
Thanks to Jim and Max for the chat. You can discover more about Jim on Twitter at JimZub, on Instagram at Jim_Zub, and online at jimzub.com. You can discover more about Max on Twitter and Instagram at Max_Dunbar and online at max-dunbar.com. You can check out Stone Star Volume 1 at your local comic book store, bookstore, or online at darkhorse.com. And thanks to you for listening to the True North Country Comics podcast. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to and like this podcast on Apple Podcasts. And please leave a good rating. Also check out the TrueNorthCountryComics.com website and follow along on Twitter at True North Comics. True North Country Comics is now on YouTube. Please like and subscribe to that video channel. Please send your feedback to John at TrueNorthCountryComics.com. Thanks again for listening, and come back soon for another episode. Bye for now. True North Country Comics Podcast is copyright True North Country Comics, copyright 2021.